In November of 1990, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency began Phase 1 of its stormwater program, requiring states to develop regulatory programs and address pollutions associated with stormwater.
Today, new regulations known as Stormwater Phase 2 have been established in Indiana to reduce the impacts of stormwater runoff from construction, industrial, municipal, governmental, and institutional sources. Impervious surfaces such as streets, sidewalks, and parking lots cannot easily absorb water.
When a pollutant is spilled on an impervious surface, it stays there until stormwater runoff washes it away. The water that runs off the land surfaces can wash sediment, oils, grease, toxins, pathogens, and other pollutants into nearby water bodies. The Stormwater Quality Management Plan was developed by MS4 and is required to address 6 minimum control measures that include public education, public outreach, public involvement, illicit discharge, construction runoff, and post-construction runoff, pollution prevention, and good housekeeping.
So, we do things like put spill kits at gas stations. We work with hazmat. We report spills and contaminations to IDEM and document it, and we take steps to educate and prevent that from occurring.
Now, a lot of people, when they walk into the edge of a ditch or walk into a river or possibly even the lake, and it's really kind of squishy and soft, and they don't want that. They want a hard pan to step on. Well, that squishy stuff is sediment, and right now they're dredging 5 to 7 feet in our county, and that's all buildup of sediment. And when you get the sediment out, you gain more capacity for water. And that's my job, to inspect them, be sure the contractors are doing them right.
Some of the things that we responded to, businesses that they just have in the back 50 gallon barrels, drums that are left out in the open. They're not in secondary containment. They're rusted, corroded, tipped over. There's liquids leaking out of them. There's a stream right there that has wildlife in it, and we want to stop that type of contamination.
Try to make the stormwater as clean as possible when it gets to its in-source. And those very inlets that Mr. Jackson has at the wastewater treatment plant, water coming back to him.
At the wastewater treatment plant, we take all the industrial wastewater and sewage from homes. It comes by pipe, by gravity here, and by pump to the treatment plant. We make it pure enough to discharge downstream. The process that we use, we screen it to take out all large debris, and you get all sorts of large debris that people flush down the toilets that they shouldn't, like underwear and things worse than that.
We can pluck out solids, and we can treat the water that handles the things that we're required to handle, and it takes care of a lot of the contaminants. But it's very difficult to address the different chemical compositions that are in grease, or prescription pills is another common thing that people dump in the toilet.
The bacteria that clean the water, they can eat some of the drugs. They don't do 100% removal, so there's part of the drugs will just pass right through the treatment plant and be in the receiving stream. Some of them act as hormones, and they'll cause imbalances in the hormone systems of the fish and the wildlife downstream. And the other thing you see is, well, that stream goes, Travis Ditch, our receiving stream, goes down, and eventually people draw water out of it. So those medicines can then get into drinking water downstream.
A lot of people fertilize their lawn, or maybe farmers' crops, and maybe their land is adjacent to a ditch or a waterway, and that overspray is getting in there. And what is in that? A lot of that stuff, phosphorus. So that isn't just fertilizing their ground; it's getting into the water or the drainage systems, and it creates an environment to promote invasive aquatic species of weeds and plants.
A process called eutrophication, which basically, the easy definition of that is that kills the good weeds and lets the bad weed thrive, so they become very invasive. And so what's happening is that the fish have less to eat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a good scenario. They have tied some algae blooms to phosphorus, quite a few of them actually.
The situation in the Gulf of Mexico where they talk about the dead zone, that's exactly what's going on there. You've got excessive nutrients coming from the Mississippi River entering the Gulf of Mexico and consuming all the oxygen, and there is a large dead zone where no wildlife can exist. And citizens can take care of that problem, can make that problem better by not using phosphorus fertilizer.
You can have green lawns. We all want the best lawn when we're in a subdivision or around a lake. We all want to compact it, and we all want to have a nice lawn because we want our house and our lawn to look better than our neighbor, kind of. And I understand that. But there again, most places in this part of the country, we have a high water table. You don't really need the phosphorus to green up your yard.
In systems where it's not a combined sewer and there is a separate storm sewer than a sanitary sewer, that water isn't treated the same. A lot of time, the parking lot drains and the rural drains, it collects the storm water and then it deposits it into ditches, rivers, lakes, and streams. So whatever's getting dumped or put in there is going to affect the chemical composition of the water and where it's going, which in turn affects the wildlife and the habitat and eventually us. So I think it's important for us to take steps to minimize that contamination and to be aware of it and do the best that we can do, all of us together.